For the agent that must be in the know, Medicare Industry Insider discusses critical insight, noteworthy trends, and upcoming issues in the Medicare market.
Deciphering and debating the legislation, regulation, and what's happening in the market. I'm Chalon Jackson.
And I'm Rachel Brameyer, and we're going to talk shop, dive deep into these complex topics, and make them understandable and actionable.
If you've ever wondered where the world of Medicare is going and how to prepare for the future, Medicare Industry Insider is the resource you've been looking for. Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Medicare Industry Insider. I'm Chalon Jackson.
I'm Rachel Brameyer.
And today we're going to talk a little bit about predatory marketing and scams. Now, this is not really anything new. Scams, predatory marketing have been around forever, pretty commonplace, but in a lot of cases they may be getting harder to spot for especially some of the most targeted people by scams and predatory marketing are seniors. Being the huge chunk of the Medicare business, senior citizens are subjected to an onslaught of calls, emails, and all sorts of other media just urging them to take action. Sometimes it's an outright scam. Sometimes it's legitimate products and services that are being marketed in a way that takes advantage of them. Either way, there are a lot of things agents should know about how to combat these issues, how to stay competitive, how to protect their clients, and how to root out the bad actors.
Yeah, and I think in addition to that, thinking of yourself as an agent, like how you can protect yourself in the business. So it definitely is more overreaching than just your clients. Like as we're going through a lot of this, think about your own business, your own personal life, and as well as like resources, tools, and topics so you can bring up with your clients just to stay more competitive and be a better resource in the community.
Mm-hmm. A lot of these things are truly universal. But before we dive into some different things, I want to start with kind of some definitions because we're going to talk about a lot of aspects of the industry and things that you may see day to day. And I want to be real clear that there is a difference between the two categories of actors that we're going to talk about. First is a scam. Scam being the offer of a product or service or some kind of threat of action that is entirely fictitious. Generally, scams are designed to prompt some kind of fast action, cause the victim to either divulge sensitive information or provide some kind of payment for a non-existent good or service or debt or something like that. Whereas predatory marketing is the offer of a legitimate good or service, something that is real, is tangible, is an actual good or service, but it's done in a way that preys on a client's misunderstanding or lack of knowledge or their uncertainty. And again, often focused on kind of a short sales process, high pressure tactics, outlandish or misleading claims, or oftentimes misrepresenting the quality or impact of the service or goods that are being offered.
Yeah, and I think we'll definitely dive into the two different aspects, but before we dive into like more details, let's talk about a little bit of statistics that we ended up finding too, because I think as senior agents looking at like how many people this actually affects, it's pretty crazy right now. Also on top of that, when we were digging into this, it was interesting because nobody actually tracks like the details. Like we see high level like money fraud, but not actual like anything that does not affect money. So if it's like, scamming them on predatory marketing when we get to that aspect. So sorry, I used the word scam, but I should have said predatory marketing. There's nothing that tracks and utilizes that. So when we talk about statistics, it's specifically going over money fraud. So elder fraud costs Americans over the age of 60 more than $966 million in 2020, which is crazy. And then on top of that, there were 920,371 victims of elder fraud in 2021. And these are all FBI reports. So like we said, it doesn't have any other way to track predatory marketing, just scams. So like watching this, FBI does take into account.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think it's really interesting to note that based on some of the other data we've seen, seniors are definitely just as likely as any other age group to fall for scams, but what we see is a greater financial impact when it is a senior that is the victim of fraud. So, just in 2020, the average loss per victim was over $18,000 for elder fraud, and there were over 3,000 people that lost more than $100,000. So these are not small amounts of money. To give you an idea, $18,000 is just about the average annual income from Social Security.
Mhm.
So, we're talking about people who are losing a full year's worth of income potentially to some of these scams.
Right. Yeah, no, it's definitely can be very detrimental to your clients or yourself if you're also a victim of that. So just being cautious as we go through this. So um, we did talk, this was specifically on scams. We're going to pivot over to predatory marketing first. And this is, like Jalen said, this is not to bash anyone, just making everything kind of transparent and aware that sometimes lead generation calls can be considered predatory marketing. It just depends on how the lead gen was acquired and how that person felt when they were on the call. Honestly, when you, as compliance, like when we're looking at compliance things, most complaints to Medicare are, robocalls or just calls where they're picking up a phone and not meeting specifically with a person face to face. So it can be just a fact of a senior picking up the phone and not actually understanding who they're talking to, and maybe it is clear, but they just didn't understand. But sometimes it's not. So we'll kind of dive into that a little bit.
Absolutely. And I think the biggest thing, as an agent, your biggest responsibility is just if you are buying leads, know where they're coming from, know how they're being generated, because what we see a lot in the industry is a lot of lead laundering. Taking bad actors that are maybe making illegal outbound calls, or using some kind of unscrupulous website or ad to draw people's attention, and then kind of washing those through layers of triage, different types of call centers, to generate what seems like a clean and valid and perfectly compliant lead that then is being sold to an agent unwillingly and unwittingly. So know where your leads are coming from, understand what the differences are between the types of leads that you're working with, and then making sure that you know where that lead is actually originating from. If it was a call, understanding how that call was generated. If it was online, knowing what that person saw that might have prompted them to make that initial phone call in, if it is inbound, and then just looking at some of the other ways that they may be using lead generation in an unscrupulous manner. So I mean, I've seen everything from surveys asking what your favorite Hershey candy bar is to get a $25 gift card to slightly less unscrupulous, just outbound cold calling. So unpermitted cold calling to generate leads in oftentimes overseas call centers that are really hard to trace and track and police, that are then getting transferred to other offshore call centers that are then eventually getting transferred somewhere U.S. based for an actual enrollment. And I would suspect that agents buying leads may have bought some leads like this without having any clue that that's how they were actually being generated.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing out of that too is like not only know how you're getting them, but if you can track the whole chain of enrollment. And that is part of the final rule where, if you're buying any leads, that lead vendor needs to have had a full transparent conversation with you to make sure that you can see how did it originate, how did they gather the information, what did the lead look like, were the proper disclaimers on it, having those type of conversations. And if you are ever curious or like not 100% sure, then we probably recommend don't buy those leads, because if you ever were to get a complaint to Medicare, it's going to be the agent that gets in trouble, not the lead company. So it all falls back on you, even though you were not the one initially sending the lead, you were the one who purchased it. So when we look at leads, we always look at, or I guess when we're talking about this, we have kind of categorized them into inbound and outbound.
Sure.
I know you kind of already mentioned a lot of the outbound or inbound, I guess, where they're actually calling the client and then it gets triaged. The inbound would be if the client actually calls a number on whatever it is, whether it be a TV ad or a piece in the mail that they got. But then it goes again, just kind of like you mentioned, it could potentially get triaged several times before that person actually ends up with a licensed agent in the United States.
Well, and again, the big thing there is just understanding what that client is seeing to prompt that phone call, and making sure that it is, this is where that predatory marketing comes in. These aren't scams in the traditional sense that they're offering actual products and services. They're offering actual insurance plans. It's just how they're generating those calls may not be entirely scrupulous and above board. So paying attention again to just where those are coming from and knowing what you're getting into anytime you're buying leads.
Yeah. And you used the term lead laundering when you were talking to
Yeah.
me, and I was like, oh, is that actually what it is? But yeah, it is.
Yep.
It's kind of scary if you think about it like that, because we use laundering for like, criminal actions and like, money. So it's interesting to see, that's basically what they're doing. You're getting it through several different call sources until it gets to the final destination. So absolutely.
So I think one of the other big areas that we see a lot of predatory marketing is when different to an extent scam artists they're using seniors or Medicare beneficiaries as a conduit for fraud. So unwilling or unwitting participants in fraud against Medicare, against health plans, seniors pick up the phone and give some information, and then the predatory marketing entity can then use that claims data, that Medicare information to submit fraudulent claims.
Mm-hmm.
So we saw a lot of that. People would say, hey, I just happened to randomly get 8 COVID tests in the mail. Well, a lot of that was fraudulent billing. They were, not plans, but there were these entities sending out COVID tests so they could bill Medicare for them, whether someone requested those or not. We see a ton of this in the durable medical equipment space, whether it's your hover around scooters or your wheelchair ramps or any number of
Your
things.
Personal emergency response system, or
Yep, a lot of companies out there that are putting the pressure on seniors and Medicare beneficiaries to make some phone calls to, start getting anything from knee braces to home modifications, and whether or not Medicare will actually pay for those is highly suspect. But they're trying to get in there and file those claims, oftentimes through kickback schemes with providers or various other things. That was a big one we saw about 5 or 6 years ago with the genetic testing for screening for different types of cancers. There were a lot of agents and doctors that got caught up in that scam, where they were, again, preying on, it was a scam in a sense because it was defrauding Medicare, but really it was just using these Medicare beneficiaries as a conduit to commit that fraud without their knowledge. So definitely another thing to watch out for.
Yeah, for sure. And I think a lot of them, they'll figure out who is in that age bracket and then what type of things that they can basically target them on. And so you mentioned COVID test, you mentioned DMEs, genetic screening. There's all sorts of things like that. So just
telemedicine has been a big one the past couple of years. Overbilling, and a lot of it, again, predatory marketing. They may even be offering legitimate goods and services. You may have someone who legitimately had a telemedicine visit, but they're getting upcoded. They're getting, they're using that individual providing some level of service, but then upcoding it to bill for more than they're providing. So again, defrauding Medicare.
We've even talked about facility charges on a telemedicine call. So like different things like that. But it's just things to be aware of as an agent and to make sure that you are protecting your client, protecting yourself, protecting your family members about that. So let's pivot a little bit to scam targeted calls. So these are actually not legitimate services. These are actually trying to be fraudulent and take advantage of the person on the phone. And we had talked, in the past, it was the Nigerian prince or winning a lottery or any of those like type of things where they would like try and gain information to like steal your money. Those are still happening today, but we're going to dive a little bit more into like specific Medicare related type of targeted scam calls that we've been seeing.
Absolutely. And again, big difference between predatory marketing, which are, legitimate companies offering legitimate services, but marketing them in a way that takes advantage of people.
Or can be misleading.
And can be misleading, offering, advertising and marketing more than can actually be provided and things like that. Whereas scams are an offer for something that never existed in the first place. So they can look very similar because you can have someone advertising services that they're not able or willing to provide at all, or you can have someone maybe over promising and under delivering can be predatory marketing.
Right.
compared to a scam. So I think the big thing with scams is, in general, they're not offering any value for, of any kind, nothing legitimate, and they have two primary goals. They're either trying to direct monetary gain, banking information, payments, something like that, or they're trying to gain information. So pulling information out that can be used to open credit cards, or again, with false billing and claims, things like that, and can definitely be really confusing to seniors. Even now today, still a lot of lottery winnings, unclaimed property, gift card scams. Another really common one is kind of bail or arrest scams. Someone will call a senior citizen pretending to be a grandchild or a nephew or a niece and saying, hey, I need bail money, or even call saying, hey, I'm from so-and-so sheriff's department. We just arrested your grandkid and they need to post bail. So lots of kind of direct financial scams like that, where they're trying to get banking information to allegedly make a deposit or give you these lottery winnings, or again, trying to get a payment for some kind of falsified debt or fee.
And actually, I was just talking to a person at our company about that their family member almost fell for the grandson thing.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I'm in a pickle with some financial things. Can you help me out? Didn't say too many words, knew what to call that person. I think it was grandma, knew what exactly to say, where they live. So had done already a little research on that grandkid before they calling. So it is interesting how much big data is gathered sometimes before they even make that call to sound specifically like that person or to say the right things to. So it's very interesting, just making sure that you're telling your client or yourself, even if you're looking at things, to make sure that they're like double checking before they hand over any money. And actually, I was talking to you about this. My dad almost got in a situation where they had called saying his Medicare card had gotten jeopardized and they were needing to resend a new Medicare card, and they were from the government and they needed to gather a couple little pieces of information before they could resend it. So even as a new Medicare enrollee, as a 65-year-old, which you usually think like, oh, like they wouldn't get scammed. We're looking at 80, 90-year-olds.
Yep.
No, like they are looking at people, and he was new to Medicare. So it was still kind of like a new, like, oh, is this something that happens normally? I'm not sure, but he ended up hanging up, thankfully. But it's just kind of crazy to see that. And actually, when we started looking at that, we were trying to figure out like how many people get basically bait and switched with the stolen card number. And we were struggling because apparently that's not something that can be tracked. So the Social Security Administration and FTC does not track how many Social Security numbers have been compromised. So when we found information, it was actually Verizon that tracks cyber attack data from dozens of organizations around the world, including federal agencies like the Secret Service and Department of Homeland Security. And the person over that, Jay Jacobs, he was a lead data scientist at Verizon, said that he estimates 60% to 80% of Social Security numbers have been stolen by hackers. So a little different than like Medicare cards, but like that's why the Social Security numbers got pulled off the Medicare cards, because of the data breaches, which it's just kind of mind-blowing when we were looking at that like nobody's actually tracking it. Like that's an estimate.
Yep, absolutely. And I think, there's so many things going on with scams right now. Just again, impersonating government agencies, impersonating banks and financial institutions, distant family members. There was an old 60 Minutes episode, I think, where this like scam expert, the person who was interviewing him from 60 Minutes, they called his mom and got his mom's Social Security number, and it took all of 45 seconds.
Wow.
It was, hey mom, I'm calling from work, and again, this is not the son. This is the scam professional. Hey mom, calling from work. I'm working on some life insurance paperwork, and I need some of your information for beneficiary. Remind me, what's your Social Security number? And mom's like, oh, hey, hi, what are you? He's like, oh, I'm just trying to get this paperwork filled out. What's your Social Security number? And she gave it to him. It was less than 1 minute on the phone. Mom gave Social Security number to someone who she didn't actually know. just, happened to sound enough like a young man
Yeah.
that she might expect a call from, and just little details, hey, I'm calling from work. That explains why you don't recognize the phone number. Just, weird
Mhm.
little details
And
like
I'm trying
that
to
that
get
make
back. I
it,
just need it really
yep,
quickly.
just
Yeah.
things that make it very easy. And I think, still seeing a lot of really common scams with things like computer and IT scams, whether that's tech support or oh, your Microsoft account's been hacked and we need to get into your computer to fix it. Still seeing a lot of things like that. And going forward, I think we'll continue to see some new twists on kind of some classic scams. Really common the past, quite a few years to see Medicaid or disability scams, people offering to help you file for benefits, whether you qualify or not. And I think now with Medicaid redeterminations going on, I suspect we'll see a lot of both predatory marketing and actual scams surrounding that Medicaid redetermination, offering to help folks keep their benefits or get benefits they're missing out on. And again, things that shouldn't necessarily cost someone any money to file for, but again, unscrupulous actors offering to file for those benefits for some kind of fee or just to collect the data and then never be heard from again.
Right. And then you also see like the medical data calls where they're trying to gather information. They'll say like they're calling from a COVID-19 testing center or vaccines or
Absolutely.
anything like that. So I think just seniors in general have a lot of big changes coming up with whether it be their health changes, Medicare, things that already are scaring them that they're like making sure that they are doing properly. And if they get a call, sometimes they don't realize what's normal and what's not normal. So as an agent, I think it's important to making sure that they know that like the government's never going to call them unless they call first and like get a call back from a call that they called first. And then if they're ever confused, double check. We were just talking to another coworker about how he thought he had gotten scammed, almost clicked on the link, and then went back and actually logged into his own personal account for that company and then realized that it was a complete scam and he almost gave some information away. So going to the actual source of whatever is calling, or even just saying, hey, I'm actually really busy right now. Can I hang up and call you back? What's a good number to call? And then do a little research. It's always very important before you give any big information out there. But I think as an agent, just making sure that you're available for your clients. If they ever think like, is this a scam? Is this real? Making sure that you open yourself up to like receiving those, even if it seems like an eye roll or like, okay, like this is actually real or it's not real. Like it may seem very straightforward to you because you see it all day, but new to Medicare people don't always see that. They don't know. And then you're looking at, your 80, 90-year-olds who are potentially just, in a situation where the world's changed so much that they never were scammed before that. So just being available, being a resource for them if they ever need to double check on anything.
Well, and I think the big call out for agents is just to help clients sift through the mess, because with all of the fear and skepticism that comes with such a heavily scammed demographic group and all of the different scams and predatory marketing, it's really, really easy for them to miss legitimate information that is vitally important to their care, whether that's emails or letters from their providers or from their insurance that are legitimate, notices from the government that again are actually legitimate. It's really easy for them to get in there. Well, if I just throw it all out, I can't get scammed. But they can miss some really important information that is legitimate and is important to their health.
Yeah, so I think that's a really good point, is like telling them like the government will never call you unless you called them first. However, they will send some very important pieces in the mail. So like let me know if you ever need me to take a look at it or if you're confused about something, but like don't throw things away in the mail. Some other things that you and I talked about to help your clients stay safe is like helping them potentially on the do not call registry, maybe letting them know that's an option that you can help them with, or at least direct them to the right place. Talk with them about like how to stay smart with a lot of the scams. Like we just talked about, like secure information. Don't say anything unless you're double checking. Hang up if, like that person you just mentioned where their mom got scammed, gave their social security number away. Like maybe that's hey, I'll text it to you, or maybe I'll see you this weekend. I can get it to you then, things that may then go back to that actual person instead of being a random number. And then just helping your clients know what information the government does collect and how they collect it is another way that you can kind of help them stay safe.
Yep, absolutely. And I think the biggest thing with making sure those clients stay safe is just making sure they're scam smart. So, I mean, it's an acronym that we've come up with to just remind and educate your clients on how to secure their information. Make sure that they have all, they're changing passwords, or they're using some kind of password manager, or, making sure that they don't have all of their passwords on Post-it notes around their computer screen. Things like that. Making sure that they are monitoring their accounts, checking their bank account regularly, checking their Medicare.gov account regularly, and any other accounts they may have to look for signs of fraud. And if they do get those phone calls or someone reaches out asking questions, people should be able to provide a modicum of information if they are calling for a legitimate business purpose. So asking for names, phone numbers, addresses. If it's an insurance related scam, asking for a national producer number, things like that. And that can help them figure out whether or not it's a scam, or scare someone into just hanging up, and then it's not a problem anymore. Then of course the biggest thing, just remaining calm, making sure that even if they feel like they may have done something wrong, that they may have been scammed, or they may have fallen prey to predatory marketing, remaining calm. Most things are fixable, even if it takes some time. And then the last one, of course, talking to a trusted professional, whether that's you, their agent, or whether that's an attorney, or someone from the legitimate agency that they thought they were talking to. Just talking to that trusted professional, and then knowing what information they may want to collect to help bring that person to justice, or to be able to file a complaint.
Yeah, so SMART. I love that. I didn't even notice that when you heard it. So let me go through that really quick. It's SMART is S is secure your information, M is monitor your accounts, A is ask questions, R is remain calm, and T is talk to a trusted professional, which I think is such a nice way to help people remember that if they need to. So the next thing we wanted to go into is grievances and filing complaints. One of the big things we always get asked is, where do I file a complaint? And knowing who it is.
Here's the beef I have to pick. Most people don't ask me where to file a complaint. They file every complaint with CMS, and that's the wrong place to file most complaints. And here's why. So CMS investigates a lot of things. Primarily, they're going to investigate fraud with providers and claims and billing and things like that. They're going to investigate cases where an application was generated for insurance and someone has a complaint about that particular case. So really, you're only going to be able to get investigated something that results in an enrollment if you're going through CMS. If you want to complain about predatory marketing, if you want to complain about unlawful marketing, if you want to complain about scams, things like that, CMS is the wrong place to do it.
So who is the correct place to go to then?
Well, it depends. And that's really kind of the whole point of this episode, is really want to talk about the different agencies that are impacted by this. You've got the Federal Trade Commission, FTC, Federal Communications Commission, FCC. You've got the Department of Justice, and you've got CMS. Now, these are at the federal level. You also have your Secretary of State's office. You have your Department of Insurance at the state level. You can also file complaints to. It just depends on the nature of the complaint and what's going on. The FCC, the Federal Communications Commission, is a really good kind of catch-all for a lot of things that we deal with, because in most cases, this type of fraud is going to involve either phone or email, both of which fall under the purview of the Federal Communications Commission. So if you've got someone says, hey, I got a scam call, okay, great. Did you get a name? Did you get a business name, an email? No, all they have is a phone number that was probably spoofed. That's all they have. FCC is pretty much the only place to file that. And it's not so much about bringing that individual case to some kind of resolution. It's about building a body of knowledge within the FCC that accumulates over time, where they can start seeing trends, and then that's how they work together with the Department of Justice to actually bring people to justice. So I think the big thing is make sure your clients understand that if they are filing some kind of complaint, they may not get the clean resolution that we all want when we file a complaint. They're not going to get a letter saying, yep, you were right and they're in jail now. That's not going to happen anytime soon.
Right.
But it's about building that body of knowledge that can later be used to create those trends, to look for patterns that can help identify bad actors.
Yeah, and just going through the Federal Trade Commission, they're going to look for predatory marketing, unlawful marketing practices, and some scams. So they may be a second place that you would potentially file like a scam or predatory marketing. But like you said, the FCC is probably where you'd want to start. And then Department of Justice, we've all heard of that, but that's usually like bigger things like reporting a crime, or one of the big ones during COVID, I think that you may have run into is just COVID fraud, where they were sharing information. That one would have been where you would have reported that particular crime. But that is a good point, that most of the time our agents think CMS is the catch-all for everything, but that isn't always the case for a lot of the scams and predatory marketing that we've been running into.
And again, it all depends on how much information you have. If someone says, hey, here's the marketing email that I got, here's the person who sent it, I know that they're an actual business, maybe the Federal Trade Commission is a good place to send that. If all you have is a phone number, FCC. So talk to your clients too about what information they can get. One of the best things a client can do to help stave off predatory marketing is ask for a number to call back. Just like, hey, I'm super busy. I really want to talk to you about this. What's the number I can call you back at? Because that phone number, that number that pops up on their phone, it's like 99.8% chance that it's a spoofed phone number that doesn't go anywhere. But if you ask for a callback number, that's going to go somewhere at least.
Yeah, and it might even help you figure out if it's a legit company too, that it's not a scam or predatory situation. So yeah, that's a really good advice.
Yep.
As an agent, we listed a couple things that you could do also to protect yourself, because we, believe it or not, have had agents who've been victims of ransomware before.
Absolutely.
Who have been even little things like been in a fire and lost all their paper documents. So like there's a lot of things that you can do as an agent to protect yourself as well from a lot of these things. Ransomware is one of them.
Yep.
Cybersecurity insurance, that's an additional insurance that you would pay for. We've run into a lot of people who are adding that. And then, of course, encrypting everything, making sure that your client's personal health information is protected, that if you are sending anything electronically that's not through a carrier portal, like an e-application, it's got to be encrypted if there's personal health information in there.
Yep. And then same thing. I mean, agents fall prey to the same scams and predatory marketing that everyone else does. It may look a little different. You're going to see, again, equal amounts of actual scams and just predatory marketing for lead companies, mail services, discount programs, automation services.
That is very true.
I mean, not everything out there is legitimate. Look for reviews. Look for other people that you know and trust that may have used a service or a particular vendor, and look out for what I would call data predators. Someone may offer a legitimate service of varying quality, but at the end of the day, they're doing it so they can get access to your data. That is, again, protected client data that you have an obligation to protect. So if you are looking at signing on with some kind of service that requires them to access your data to provide that service, just understanding your obligations under HIPAA and understanding what is needed to be in place to make sure you're safeguarding that data.
Perfect. So I think we'll do a really good job of kind of wrapping up our scam and predatory marketing episode. I hope you learned a lot about not only the difference between scams and predatory marketing, but also some things that you can do to protect your clients, protect yourself as a business owner, and overall just be an awesome resource for your community. Thank you.